months after the fall of Kabul, hundreds of Afghans who worked alongside Australian forces remain stranded in the war-torn country. Many of them have been granted protection visas by the Australian government but are unable to flee the Taliban regime. Today, Immigration Minister Alex Hawke announced those protection visas will be extended on an ongoing basis. In other words, Australia has their back and we're not going to leave them behind. To discuss this and more, I want to bring in my international panel from Adelaide, host of Corey Bernardi, and Sydney, co-host of Outsiders, James Morrow. Well, we have to be a country that keeps our word, don't we, Corey?
Yeah, of course we do, Peter. And once you've given a commitment to these people, it's up to us, it's incumbent upon us now to honour that commitment and to get them out of Afghanistan. And quite frankly, that's going to be the huge challenge. I know there are people who are working behind the scenes very, very hard to affect change in this area, but I don't know how you're going to get people out of Afghanistan without risking lives of Australian troops or Australian personnel. It's a huge diplomatic issue, and I'm glad Alex Hawke has extended the visas, but more needs to be done, quite frankly.
All right, let's go to the United States and a chilling warning from the country's second-ranking commander, General John Hyten, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says the Chinese Communist Party will soon have the capability, James, to launch a surprise nuclear strike against the American mainland. Now, that is probably the worst news I've heard all week.
Well, yeah, it is, and I suspect that actually he's probably underplaying the threat. I suspect that actually China does have the capability to do that. We saw that very interesting and disturbing hypersonic missile test that China pulled the other day, which would basically give them the capability to drop a warhead anywhere on Earth. We also know that China is building ballistic missile fields in their deserts, and that they are not behaving in the way that, say, the Soviet Union did during the Cold War, when there were basically only two real nuclear rivals. This is a much more complicated situation, and they have much different goals. I think General Hyten, and I think the one good news about this is that there is somebody taking these sorts of things seriously at the Joint Chiefs, because we've seen Mark Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, be more concerned, about white rage and wokeness and things like that. So at least someone is thinking about these things. The danger is not so much that they use this, but that they say, well, we're making a move on Taiwan, and if you do anything about it, we have got you basically checkmated unless you want to annihilate the globe. And I think that that's essentially the game theory that they're working on. It's a very dangerous situation that we're heading into.
All right, let's stay stateside. Another day, another shocking poll for Joe Biden. This is a Politico Morning Consult survey. Politico is well known to political insiders. They found that half of registered voters don't think Biden is in good health, while 48% say they don't think he's mentally fit. Now, Corey, we're halfway through, not even halfway through yet, his first term. Half the country thinks he's lost his mind. There's talk of this rift between the president and his VP, even a rumour that they'll dump her at the next election. Where do you go from here?
Well, Peter, I should point out that they're not even at the end of their first year in Biden's first term, and the country is falling apart. My question is, what do the other 50% of people think? That he's actually competent and up to the task, and that mentally he's not declining at a rate of knots? I mean, this is probably the most badly affected president in the history of the United States. I don't think he's running the show. He seems to disappear to Delaware for every weekend. He disappears halfway through the week as well for nap time. He calls a lid on life basically at 11 o'clock in the morning. The bureaucrats are running the show, and they are running America into the ground. And I tell you, if 50% of Americans cannot yet see that, you've got to wonder what hope is there for the political system over there, because it's so tribal that reality, it's now divorced from reality, I probably should say.
I know, I want to say that I respect the office. I do respect the office, but this feels like a weekend at Bernie sort of presidency. And it's, you're right to say we're not even a year in. We've got another 3 years ahead. All right, let's go to this other concerning story if we can, James. Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai hasn't been seen for 2 weeks. Maybe not unusual, but it is unusual when you think that she's accused a former senior CCP politician of sexual assault. In a social media post last month, Shuai, who's a Wimbledon and Roland Garros doubles champion, said former Vice Premier Zhang Guoli forced her into sex during a long-term relationship. Today, Chinese state media has released an email that's purportedly written by her, backing away from that public statement. But we haven't seen her, and a lot of other tennis players have gone onto social media voicing their concerns as well.
Yeah, that's right. And it is, it just goes to show the nature of the regime. Peng Shuai is was one of China's great tennis heroes, one of the great athletic heroes. And she essentially seems to have been disappeared by the regime after making these allegations of sexual assault. Now, this tells us really what sort of regime we're dealing with, because we've now seen an email purportedly, as you say, from her, which is written in this very sort of bizarre, stilted language of, oh, hello, everybody. It's me, Peng Shuai. I'm fine. I've just been resting. Don't worry about me. Everything's fine. Go about your business, which, of course, nobody is buying. The great challenge, of course, is going to be to global and Australian tennis bodies, but also, I think, world sports authorities to say, look, we're not going to compete with you guys if this is how you treat your athletes, because I think that will be the sort of blow to the prestige of China and the loss of face that I think will be very damaging to them.